everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. So today, we're going to talk about war. War with Mexico. That's right. America fought a war with Mexico in the 1840s. Why? We're going to talk about that today. Let's get started. So if it seems like war with Mexico kind of comes out of left field here, it kind of does, while simultaneously really fitting into the narrative that is taking place in the United States at the time with this concept of manifest destiny we've been talking about this unit. Manifest destiny is the idea that America wants to expand their borders. Mexico's got some land America's going to want, and we're going to go to war with Mexico over it. That sounds pretty simple, and it is pretty straightforward like that, but the story itself is crazy. All right, let's get started here with this guy. This is a president you've never heard of before. This is James K. Polk. He happens to be relatively forgettable, even though he is a pretty influential president as far as presidents and impact on American history goes. So here's a little picture of him. This is James K. Polk. Again, Hulk Hogan with Hulkamania, which is a professional wrestler. Probably dating myself here. I think this is funny. This is James K. Polk and Manifest Destiny. And his little things is Polkamania. Supposed to be like, anywho, don't judge me. So James K. Polk, when he ran for president, he is a big supporter of expansionism of the United States area. All right, that is a big. He said we're going to take over everything that we can. His campaign slogan was actually 5440 or fight. 5440 is a line of latitude that basically is up in what is present day Canada. He said we're going to fight England and take over this land that is like being owned by England at the time in Canadian territory that is present day Canada. And he said we're going to go to war for that. He gets elected on the platform that he is willing to fight to take more land for America and this concept of manifest destiny, where it is our responsibility to expand our culture. He's going to win the election. However, the whole idea of actually fighting England for Canadian land never comes to fruition. But understand that his mentality when he becomes president is he wants more land for America. So when he actually becomes president, he sets his sights somewhere else. So this is a map of America, which is the different versions of orange and gray here. The blue part, all right, this is Mexico. Mexico is owned by Spain. You can tell that Mexico had been owned by Spain because they speak Spanish. We were English colonies. We speak English predominantly in the United States. Mexico is owned by Spain. Mexico has declared their independence. They have a leader, a guy named Santa Anna. All the blue area is Mexican territory. Now, based on this map here in the blue, the vast majority of Mexican citizens are going to live in the southern part of Mexico. Where this is labeled as northern Mexico or the area of Texas, very few actual Mexicans live there. All right? So this had led to a situation where a lot of Americans, using slavery and cotton, all right, and mass production of cotton, realized the land in Texas in which nobody from Mexico was living on was fantastic land for farming. And not just any kind of farming, but cotton farming with the use of slaves. But it is owned by Mexico. So a lot of American planters moved to this region of Mexico called Texas. So they are leaving America. They go into Texas. They start growing cotton there, and Mexico gives them permission to do this. Well, when Spain gives up Mexico, Mexico controls itself, Mexico's constitution says slavery is outlawed in Mexico. So they try to tell these, they don't even call themselves Americans because they know they left America. They call themselves Texans, all right? They try to tell the Texans, hey, you can't have slaves anymore. A big fight takes place. The famous story of the Alamo, all that. Don't have time for, we can't go through every state's, originality story here. But Texas actually becomes their own country with their own president because they had beat Santa Anna in an army, in a battle. They had gotten lucky. Santa Anna, the leader of Mexico, is prepping to come back and take back over Texas. Texas asked to join the United States. And the United States is like, sure. So Texas joins the United States. Santa Anna is angry at America for basically getting involved in what Santa Anna thought, was a Mexican dispute. So now America is on the bad side of Mexico, because Mexico thinks America should never have let Texas, which they viewed as just a rebelling area, join America. But now that Texas has joined America, Mexico realizes their military isn't nearly as strong as the American military. So there's some hostilities here between Mexico and the United States, because Mexico feels like America stole Texas from them. All right. America feels like we did everything on the up and up, so Texas was their own country. They asked to join. That's fine. All right. So here's where, so let's get caught up. Texas is part of America. All right. And it has slavery, which is going to cause a bunch of tensions in and of itself. But you know what's better than having all this land of Texas? All of that other land, like California, New Mexico. Once James K. Polk comes in and realizes how fantastic the land is in Texas, it's great for growing and expansion. He also wants to land in California and New Mexico, which is on this map, the stuff west of Texas. So he tries, all right, to go to Santa Anna and purchase this land, meaning what is present-day California, New Mexico, and Arizona, all right? The land to the left of Texas here. Tries to buy it from Santa Anna for $30 million. That's probably a relatively fair price, I would guess. I mean, that's not a complete ripoff. There wasn't really anything there. It was probably a fair price. But Santa Anna refuses to even meet with James K. Polk or the delegation from America, because Mexico is mad because they still feel like America stole Texas from them. So they don't want to talk to America about anything, much less selling them land. So Santa Anna completely stonewalls James K. Polk and is like, no, we're not even going to talk about it. And then James K. Polk says, all right, we'll go about it a different way. So the question here is, explain why there was tension between America and Mexico that caused Mexican leader Santa Anna to refuse to listen to an offer to purchase Mexican land. This is kind of explain to me what the situation was with Texas and why Mexico is kind of mad at America with the concept of Texas. So answer that, pause me, or we'll move on. All right. So James K. Polk wants that land of California and New Mexico. The issue is, if they won't sell it, how are you going to get it? Well, we could just pay them for it, but they won't sell it to us. We could take it from them, but you're not like legally allowed to take land unless you're at war. Well, why don't we just go to war with them? That's a problem. And the reason that is a problem is because Mexico doesn't want to go to war with America. They know they're not as strong as America. Why in the world would they possibly try to, start a war with America that they know they couldn't win? So what James K. Polk is going to do, and America does this commonly throughout history, we don't want to be the bad guys. We don't want to be the ones to start a war because then we look like the bad guys. We need Mexico to attack us. All right? Mexico doesn't have any reason to attack us. So what we will do is we're going to poke Mexico with a stick, figuratively. It's like poke, poke, poke. Or polk. See, I made a pun. Anyway, we're going to poke Mexico with a stick until Mexico gets mad and retaliates, and then we can claim they attacked us. And Mexico's like, stop it, America. I'm like, oh, look at they're being aggressive. Send in the troops. This is what is going to happen. And we know exactly how we're going to poke them with a stick. So Texas is part of America now. However, it was so wide open. There's a lot of Texas that nobody lives at, so there's a dispute over who owns what part of Texas. According to America, the bottom part of Texas is the Rio Grande. All right, it is the current bottom of Texas. It's this the blue river here at the very bottom. According to Mexico, the bottom of Texas, all right, is actually the Nueces River. All right. So the area in between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande, according to Mexico, they own it. According to America, we own it. All right? So it's just going to take, at some point, some lawyer's got to sit down and figure out who owns what. That's what would typically have happened here. But James K. Polk knows there's a dispute. So to poke Mexico with a stick, he takes a group of troops and places them in between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande. By doing this, right, by placing troops there, legally in America's mind, we just put troops on American land. According to Mexico, we just invaded them because we crossed the Nueces River with troops. So Santa Anna, thinking that, he can't let this go unpunished, sends troops up to attack these troops but that's between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River because both countries think they own that. A little skirmish breaks out and the American troops scamper back. This is all that James K. Polk needed because now the Mexican government, under orders from Santa Anna, have attacked American troops on American soil. See how that works out? We poked them with a stick. They came back. All of a sudden, we have justification for war. And America turns around in 1846 and officially declares war on Mexico. And you know what the very first thing is that we do? We take over California, New Mexico, and Arizona, which is also present-day Nevada and Utah. We just take over all that's the first thing we did. We went running and we just took over all their land. And Santa Anna's like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like, we poked them with a stick because now that we're at war, it is legal to take land from them. So that's why we wanted to go to war with them. So on day one of the Mexican-American War, we actually take over what we want, which is California, New Mexico, Arizona, that region. Well, yay! But the war's not over because we did officially declare war on them, so we actually have to go fight them. We send our top general at the time, Zachary Taylor, down to Mexico to fight Santa Anna and the Mexican army. The United States military is vastly superior because we've just been around a little longer than they have. So America invades Mexico and makes pretty short work of the Mexican army. Zachary Taylor, the head American general, marches all the way down to Mexico City and defeats the Mexican army, captures Mexico City, and takes Santa Anna captive. All right. If America had wanted to take over Mexico and own Mexico at this time, we could have legally, I guess, or at least militarily, we could have controlled it. We had no desire to do this. This is the same reason England had no desire to take over America after the War of 1812, after they beat the snot out of us. When people get a taste of independence, they don't want to be controlled. The Mexicans had just gotten their independence from Spain. If America tried to take them over, there's no benefit. They would have fought back. There's no reason for America to have wanted to take over Mexico. So could we have? Sure. There was no desire to do that. So that was never really on the table. But there's a lot of things we do want for Mexico. So Zachary Taylor, figuratively, holds a gun to Santa Anna's head and makes him sign this treaty that's going to end the war. The treaty, right, is called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. All right. So here's what the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo says. Mexico will now acknowledge the bottom of Texas is the Rio Grande. That's what we were originally saying anyway, that it was the Rio Grande. Number two, Mexico gives up New Mexico and California. Basically that land that we immediately took and stole. Remember the money that the $30 million we tried to pay them for it and they wouldn't give, they wouldn't sell it to us? We just went and took it. All right. Then, basically, there's a lot of Americans. Crazy stuff that happened. A lot of lawsuits have been filed against Mexico. America said, ignore that. We got your back. Don't worry about that. That's more of a complicated aspect to this that we don't need to go into. But one of the oddest things, and America does this a lot after this. So Santa Anna's like, he's like, has a gun held up. He's like, all right, I'll sign whatever you want. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to sign? I'll sign it. And so we're like, Texas, the Rio Grande, you give us California, Mexico. We say, okay, well, is there anything else? And we say, yeah, we're going to give you $15 million. And Santa Anna's like, what? You're going to give me, we're like, don't talk back. He's like, okay. We forced Santa Anna to take $15 million from America. This is a new standard that America does moving forward now. When we take land from somebody, we force them to take money from us. The reason we do this is that way, once all the dust settles from this war, they can't claim we stole anything from them. Kind of like they claim we stole Texas from them. All right? We paid you for it in the amount of $15 million. How much did we offer them originally for it? $30 million. And they said no. Then we went and fought them, took it from them, paid them $15 million. America fully feels justified here that we have paid the appropriate price for this land. So the question here, why does America require Mexico to take $15 million from us after the Mexican-American War? How does that actually benefit America? So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. All right. So after the Mexican-American War, James K. Polk is walking back up, to the United States. He passes a little piece of land. He's walking through all this red area here at the Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo. That ended the Mexican-American War. This is all land America now owns. All right, and as he's walking up through there, he realizes there's this little piece of land. The bottom part, New Mexico, California, Arizona. It is part of Arizona present day. And we're like, dang, should have taken that from him. All right. So James, before Zachary Taylor even gets home, he goes back down to see Santa Anna. All right. So it's this little piece of land right here. All right. So little piece. Go back to this. You see that little gray piece that's below the red? That's the piece we should have put in the Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo. We forgot. We were like, hey, Santa Anna, can we have this too? We'll pay you $10 million. Santa Anna, he doesn't want to give us anything. But what happens if he says no? We'll come fight him, destroy everything, take it from him, give us $3 million or give him $3 million for it. So he's like, fine, I guess. So Santa Anna chooses to sell us another piece of land right after the Mexican-American War because America is just taking whatever we want. This is very much a heavy-handed manifest destiny idea of spreading the United States. Now, there's a very important situation here. This is why the Mexican-American War is so important in American history. You remember the Missouri Compromise we talked about a couple lessons ago? That dealt with new states coming in. And that line, the 3630 line, that stretches all the way across the center of America. Remember, anybody below that line was allowed to be a slave state. Anybody above that line was allowed to be a free state. So free above, slave below. That's the rule. The anti-slavery people were cool with this because there's really nowhere for slavery to expand at below the 3630 line. All this land that America has just acquired from the Mexican-American War is all below that 3630 line, and now slavery can expand just as much as non-slave states, and tensions are going to skyrocket over the issue of slavery after the Mexican-American War, because now slavery has tons of places to expand to, and the anti-slavery people are furious over this. So the question is, explain why the additional land gained from the Mexican-American War is going to cause huge issues in America over the issue of slavery. So pause me, answer that completely, and we'll move on. All right, so California is an area that we got land from. Nobody lived in California, just a handful of people. One of the people that lives there, at this point, he's an American, a guy named John Sutter. John Sutter lives there, it's 1848. And John Sutter, he's, who in the world in their right mind is going to travel across the country in all these dangerous regions to go live in California? Yeah, the weather's nice, but who would do that? Well, John Sutter is one of the very few people that live in this area called San Francisco. All right, just a couple hundred people that live there, 800 to be exact in 1848. And he's out one day, and he has a cabin. He has this door that always swings shut in his cabin that he made himself. And one day he finds this big shiny rock, and he's like, "Oh, cool!" And he goes and puts it in his house to prop his door open. His buddy comes by later on and is like, "Hey, John Sutter, I like you and all. You know you're kind of dumb, right?" John Sutter's like, "I'm not dumb. Why would you call me dumb?" He's like, "Because this rock you got here, propping the door open, it's like a 20-pound hunk of solid gold, right? Like that's worth like $1 gazillion. And John Sutter's like, "It is?" And he's like, "Yes." And all of a sudden, John Sutter is super rich because he found gold. Well, gold doesn't just appear by itself. There's gold all in them parts in California. Whoever comes and finds it, it's their gold. This is American land. It's unregulated. There's nobody there. So as soon as they say gold, and that word trickles across America, all right, from John Sutter's discovery over to the East Coast, people start flocking across America, all right? Because it takes about a year for the information to get out there to the East Coast, and people start sprinting across the country to try to find gold in California. These are not rich people, right? Rich people, there's no reason for them to go. These are poor people looking to go over here, get rich quick, find some gold. This takes about a year from 1848 to 1849. It is the gold rush of 1849, and people start flocking across the country. And they're moving to these places that we just got from the Mexican-American War. The reason that's important is when it's not populated, the whole issue of slavery expanding doesn't really matter because nobody lives out there. Now that people are flocking quickly across the country, this actually helps America's other concept of manifest destiny of spread our culture everywhere. Because of the gold rush of 1849, and you can remember that, because it's in the city of San Francisco, which has an NFL team, which is called the San Francisco 49ers, named after this gold rush, because the population goes from 800 people in 1848 to by 1852, like 4 years later, has 35,000 people in that city as people flock in trying to find gold. It's not going to take long for all these people that live in California to start wanting to become a state, and that's when tensions are going to start skyrocketing. What are we going to do when people want to be slave states, free states, and all that? Because that's getting ready to happen in California, and a lot of decisions have to be made, and anger is going to skyrocket. So the question here is, how did the discovery of gold in California help America and its concept of manifest destiny? So pause me, answer that completely, and we're moving on. So California comes in, all right. Let me jump ahead a little bit. Remember I had mentioned with Andrew Jackson that if you're the head president or the head general in a war that you win, there's a good chance you can be the president. It's exactly what happens with Zachary Taylor. He was the head general in a war that we win of the Mexican-American War. He is elected president in 1848. He's going to die of food poisoning while he's in office. Kind of random on that one. But while he is the president, California asked to join America as a state. Now, California, all All right, here's a little map here. California on the far left state over here, that is mostly below the 3630 line. So all the slave states are like, yes, they're going to come in as a slave state. We'll have more slave states. California asked to be a free state. Now, the reason California asked to be a free state is because it's all poor people there, people looking for gold. They didn't bring slaves in with them. Not only that, everybody's looking for gold in California. The last thing they want is a rich guy to show up with a bunch of slaves, make all the slaves go look for all the gold, and give the rich guy all the gold, and the rich guy gets richer. So it is an every man for themselves situation in California. So California actually wants to be a free state. The South is upset. This immediately causes the controversy because the South is like, no, we need all the slave states we can get because the North is trying to bully us after the Uncle Tom's Cabin and tensions are high. So there is Henry Clay. He's the same guy who came up with the Missouri Compromise. Comes up with the Compromise of 1850. I am shocked, honestly, that this made it through. But here's what the Compromise of 1850 says. California, yes, you are allowed to be a free state. New Mexico and Utah, you are allowed this concept of popular sovereignty. All right. Basically, whoever moves there can decide for themselves whether they want to be a slave state or a free state, which still kind of goes along with the concept of under the 3630 line that you can decide for yourself whether you want to be slave or free. Texas was being weird, had to release New Mexico. The whole weird thing with Texas here, that's not necessary. But basically, all of this stuff really benefits the North. So the South is upset with the Compromise 1850 at first until this last part gets added in. It's called the Fugitive Slave Act. The Fugitive Slave Act said, if a slave escapes the South and runs north, and anybody in the North, in a free state, sees this slave, they're required by law to go using their own time and money, capture this slave, drag them back down south, and return them to their owners. This law, the Fugitive Slave Act, is like an insurance policy for the Southerners on their slaves. And it would also mean that people that are abolitionists, staunch against slavery, would be required by law to return slaves to their owners and take people who have escaped slavery and return them back down south and force them back into slavery. This is wildly unacceptable to the North, but for some unimaginable reason, the Compromise 1850 actually passes. The fugitive slave law goes into effect, and the North is furious about it. They cannot believe that this mandate that they have to return any escaped slaves that they find into this evil institution in the South has gone through. The South loves it because it is like Frederick Douglass, we talked about him yesterday. He makes it to the North. He would then be required by law to be forced to come back down to the South to his owners. So the Compromise of 1850 really pressed tensions over the edge because you can't ignore slavery anymore in the North. Because if you see a slave, you have to return them. And if you don't, you can go to jail. So there is a lot of anger over this. So much so, this guy here, Mr. Neckbeard, talked about him the other day, John C. Calhoun, he's still around, he says, man, now he's from South Carolina. He loves the Fugitive Slave Act. He even admits, this may have taken it too far. I don't see how we could. Tensions are so high now over the expansion of slavery. I don't know how we come back from it when things like the Fugitive Slave Act get passed. So the question here is, what part of the Compromise of 1850 was most controversial, and why were the people so viciously angry at the Fugitive Slave Act? All right, so answer that one. That's what I got for you today. See you guys tomorrow.